Chapter 31 West Sea, Navigator. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Armed. Hockey, Kazan's arm froze over, and 5 icicles shot from his palm, forming a giant ice ball that rocketed skyward, boom, star, the massive ice ball collided with Chen Fan's Thunder Dragon in a cataclysmic explosion. Shockwaves rippled outwards, and geysers erupted from the sea. The opposing forces dissipated, leaving shards of ice scattered across the ocean. Who? Chen Fan panted, the 2 Thunder Dragon attacks having drained his stamina. Seeing Kazan block his strongest attack, even with his advanced armament Hockey, Chen Fan knew he was outmatched. Continuing the fight would be suicide. See you next time. Chen Fan grinned, lightning crackling around him, ready to bolt. Kazan, not about to let him escape, was already covering himself in ice, ready to give chase, but Chen Fan had anticipated this. Gathering destructive energy in his right hand, he formed a thunder spear. A little parting gift. Chen Fan smirked at the approaching Kazan, then hurled the thunder spear downwards with blinding speed, aiming for the injured and unconscious brown dolphin. The adjutant, witnessing the attack, felt a surge of fear. He wasn't sure he could withstand the force, but without hesitation, he raised his blade to intercept the spear. Kazan, reacting instantly, changed course, rushing to protect the dolphin. Just as the spear struck, he erected a massive ice shield. Clang, star, the thunder spear slammed against the ice shield repeatedly, trying to break through, but eventually petered out and vanished. Kazan lowered his shield, gazing up at the sky. Chen Fan was gone, only the trembling pirates remained on the sea, surrounded by the navy. They looked at the enraged navy with despair. Idila and the others, who had dared to hope, were plunged back into despair. Round them up. And get the Lieutenant General Brown Dolphin to the medics. Kazan, despite his usually easygoing nature, was visibly angered by Chen Fan's escape. He barked orders for the pirates to be arrested. The pirates, terrified by Kazan's power, surrendered without a fight. As the pirates were rounded up and Lieutenant General Brown Dolphin was carried away for treatment, Kazan turned away, picked up his den mushi, and dialed the Marshal's office. Navy Headquarters, Marshal's office. Gulu. Cyborg Kong, busy with paperwork, answered the ringing den mushi. Hearing the voice on the other end, he said, Kazan. What is it? Marshal, I have a report. I encountered that bloody tiger, Chen Fan. He severely injured Lieutenant General Brown Dolphin before I arrived, fought me, and then escaped. Oh, and it seems he's eaten the rumble fruit. That's how he got away. Kazan reported in his typical drawl. Cyborg Kong's expression changed instantly. You mean the guy who escaped from Impel Down defeated Brown Dolphin and ate the rumble fruit? He asked, his voice filled with shock. Affirmative, Kazan replied. Kong slammed his fist on the desk in frustration. The seas were already in turmoil. Roger was the Pirate King, and Whitebeard, Golden Lion, and the Red Count were all major threats, and now this. This punk not only escaped Impel Down, embarrassing the Navy, but also obtained the rumble fruit. If left unchecked, he'd become another nightmare. After hanging up, Kong was clearly troubled. He considered issuing a buster call, but that required sending a full admiral to hunt down Chen Fan, effectively taking them out of other duties. With the new world in chaos, the Navy couldn't spare an admiral. After a long pause, Cyborg Kong decided to raise Chen Fan's bounty to 1 billion and issue a level 2 demon calling order. Under this directive, any nearby vice admiral who encountered Chen Fan must abandon their current mission, unless actively engaged in combat or dealing with celestial dragons, and pursue him with everything they had. Kong wanted to crush Chen Fan before he became an even bigger problem. However, Cyborg Kong would later regret not issuing the highest level demon calling order. 3 days later, on an island in the West Blue called Simobi Island, the sun beat down from above. Chen Fan saw his bounty had jumped to 1 billion, and his title changed to Thor. He smiled, pleased that the Navy had finally gotten the memo about his new nickname. Initially, the Navy hesitated, but to make it clear to everyone that Chen Fan was the rumble fruit user, they eventually caved. Walking through the streets of Simobi Island, Chen Fan headed directly towards the Navy base. His destination, or rather, his target, was a certain Lafitte, who was working as a prosecutor here. After all, to sail the seas, you needed a navigator. Otherwise, you'd just be lost, and as Chen Fan's first crew member, they needed to be talented, if not outright strong. Nami hadn't been born yet, as far as Chen Fan knew. At this point in time, Lafitte, the future navigator of the Blackbeard pirates, was the best choice. Chapter 32 Support, Porusalino. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a while, Chen Fan crossed the street and stood before the naval base, a sprawling complex. Without a second thought, Chen Fan started to walk in, but two Navy soldiers blocked his path. Hold it right there. This is a Navy base. No one unauthorized is allowed in. Move along. Chen Fan, wasting no time on words, unleashed a surge of thunderous energy and pointed toward the sky. Instantly, dark clouds swirled above. Under the astonished gaze of the two guards, two massive lightning bolts crashed down, striking them directly. Boom! Two small craters marked where they had stood. The two Navy soldiers reduced to nothing but ashes. Having cleared the way, Chen Fan strolled into the naval base, his expression calm. The enormous blast had already grabbed the attention of soldiers stationed at the 36th Naval Division. Chen Fan didn't give it a second thought. As soon as he stepped inside, he found himself surrounded by hundreds of armed soldiers, rifles raised and firing a barrage of bullets, but these bullets, lacking any hockey enhancement or being made of sea prism stone, were useless against Chen Fan. He simply shimmered with electricity as his elemental body allowed the projectiles to pass harmlessly through him. Bang, bang. They clattered to the ground. The Navy soldiers stared in disbelief. They were convinced this guy was some kind of freak, impervious to bullets and wielding the power of lightning. Thunder God Chen Fan, what are you doing here? Vice Admiral Aguila, face grim, stepped forward. The rank and file may not have recognized him, but a vice admiral had seen Chen Fan's wanted poster and, combined with the destructive thunder, knew him immediately. Aguila felt no excitement at the prospect of capturing a notorious pirate. He'd just learned that even Lieutenant General Brown Dolphin from headquarters had been defeated by Chen Fan. Only Lieutenant General Kazan's timely arrival had saved him from being killed. My strength is about the same as a major general at headquarters. Am I supposed to win against this guy? Chen Fan ignored him, focusing instead on a man in a black hat, leaning on a cane. Lafitte, right? I'm here to offer you a spot on my crew, if you're interested. Chen Fan cut to the chase. Interesting. And why should I join you? Lafitte smiled. He hadn't expected Thunder God Chen Fan to personally recruit him. Because I like your style, and I can take you to the top. Chen Fan's face was confident. Very interesting. Typical Chen Fan, the so-called god of thunder, expecting me to betray the Navy with just a few words. Lafitte didn't outright refuse. He was intrigued. Meanwhile, Aguila had secretly dispatched men to his office to contact Navy headquarters for backup. Arring. The Admiral's office, Cyborg Kong, just finishing up some paperwork, picked up the phone. Admiral Kong, this is the Lieutenant Commander of the 36th Branch in the West Blue. Thunder God Chen Fan has shown up at our base. We need immediate assistance. Cyborg Kong's expression darkened. He'd just sent out forces to capture Chen Fan, and the guy had the nerve to show up at a Navy base. Tell the Lieutenant General on duty to stall Chen Fan however possible. I'm sending reinforcements right away. Understood, sir. The colonel relayed the order to Aguila. Cyborg Kong hung up, searching for the vice admiral currently on assignment in the West Blue. Even he was starting to sweat. If a real fight broke out, the local lieutenant general wouldn't last 10 minutes against Chen Fan. Defeating Chen Fan would require at least an elite lieutenant general. Finding someone of that caliber in the West Blue proved difficult. Cyborg Kong searched, but no suitable candidates were on hand. Finally, he decided to dispatch Porusalino as quickly as possible. He placed another call. Issue orders for Porusalino to abandon his current mission and proceed to the 36th branch in the West Blue, with maximum haste. Even if he can't capture Chen Fan alive, he has to prevent him from destroying the base. On the other end of the line. Thunder God Chen Fan, huh? Sounds intense. Porusalino said lazily, then transformed into a beam of light, shooting through the sky. Back at the naval division, Aguila, now knowing he had to stall Chen Fan, felt a wave of dread. Marshal Cyborg Kong's order felt like a death sentence. Holding Chen Fan back was easier said than done. Lafitte and Chen Fan were still talking, Chen Fan seemingly oblivious to the entire Navy presence. I'm a prosecutor for the Navy. What reason could I possibly have to go with you? Lafitte asked, interested but still probing. It would take more than just a few empty words to make him abandon his post. It would take someone more powerful, or with a more well-thought-out plan, to convince him. Simple. I'll just destroy this base. I hate repeating myself. One more rejection, and you're dead. Chen Fan's patience was wearing thin, and he was seriously considering violence. Lafitte's face lit up. He ignored the threat. Interesting. Okay, destroy this base, and I'll join you. Lafitte, what are you saying? You're a Navy prosecutor. How could you say such a thing? Aguila demanded. The other Navy soldiers stared at Lafitte in confusion. Everyone has their own dreams. I just find being a Navy prosecutor a bit dull. Lafitte shrugged with a smile. Chen Fan, hearing Lafitte's agreement, smirked. He had no intention of letting anyone from the Navy base off the hook. He was a pirate, and the Navy was his enemy. Destructive thunder energy crackled around him, blue sparks dancing in the air. He glared at Aguila, eyes cold. Enough talk. Time for action. In the blink of an eye, Chen Fan's fist, wreathed in lightning, vanished like a ghost. With incredible speed, a thunderous punch hurtled toward Aguila. Chapter 33 Destroy the Navy Branch. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even though he knew he was outmatched, Aguila couldn't just sit there and wait to die. Time to get serious. Lock and load. Instantly, Aguila's right hand was coated in hardened hockey, his fingers morphing into claws as he lunged forward. Boom, fists and claws collided. The raw force and destructive lightning sent Aguila staggering back, barely managing to stop after 10 meters, showing no mercy. Chen Fan pressed his attack. Seeing this, the Navy soldiers drew their pistols, unleashing a hail of bullets. Annoying gnats. Chen Fan halted. Terrifying lightning crackled around his hands, enveloping the bullets. With a grunt, he hurled the bullets back with the same force. The Navy soldiers were horrified. Some didn't even have time to react. Blood splattered as the bullets struck, dropping dozens of them dead in their tracks. Hold your fire. He's out of your league. Aguila's face contorted with rage. He clenched his fists, veins throbbing, and charged Chen Fan. Oh, you're pissed now, huh? A smirk played on Chen Fan's lips as lightning flared around him. He met Aguila head-on. Bang. Bang, they traded blows, each punch landing with brutal force. Blood flew, splattering on the ground. From the start, Aguila was at a clear disadvantage. No matter how angry he got, he couldn't bridge the gap in their power. He had one goal, to stall Chen Fan. He hoped reinforcements from Navy headquarters would arrive soon, but Chen Fan wasn't about to waste time. Darkness gathered on his fist, crackling with thunder, as he aimed a lightning-charged blow at Aguila's head. Aguila's eyes widened in fear. It was too fast to dodge. He braced himself, raising his arms to block with hardened hockey. The impact was devastating. Aguila was thrown back, his arms feeling like they were about to snap. Chen Fan gave him no respite, immediately attacking again. Aguila gritted his teeth and fought back with everything he had. Fists, hands, feet, even his head became weapons in their desperate exchange. They fought like wild animals, but it was a one-sided beatdown. If Aguila was a wolf, Chen Fan was a tiger. The difference was too great. As time wore on, Aguila sustained more and more injuries. His stamina was pushed to its limit. If this kept up, Chen Fan would beat him to a pulp. I admire your guts, but this world is ruled by strength. Chen Fan lashed out with a lightning-charged kick. Ha! I'm with the Navy. You're a pirate. Don't get cocky. Aguila countered with a hockey-infused kick of his own. Their kicks collided, but Aguila's face didn't reflect any joy. He realized that Chen Fan's lightning had a paralyzing effect. Each close-quarters hit left residual electricity in his body. These tiny shocks were numbing him. He was already weaker than Chen Fan in skill and strength. Now, with his body feeling sluggish, his reflexes and speed were dropping. This seemed like a hopeless situation, a guaranteed defeat. The Navy soldiers behind him watched anxiously. They saw Aguila, now covered in a dozen wounds, glaring at Chen Fan with hate. But they were helpless. They were too weak to make a difference, and would only get in the way. The only one with a chance to help, Lafitte, was watching from the sidelines, doing nothing. This ends now. You've lasted longer than most. Chen Fan blasted Aguila back with a final punch, then hovered in the air. Hockey boost to 800 million volts, Thunder Dragon. Lightning crackled around Chen Fan. He raised his hands, and dark clouds filled the sky. A terrifying Thunder Dragon, dozens of meters long, roared to life. Carrying the power of total destruction, it lunged down at Aguila. Don't underestimate me. I'm with the Navy. Determination blazed in Aguila's eyes. He showed no fear of death. Hockey, maximum impact. Veins bulged in Aguila's right arm, his blood boiling. He channeled all his strength into his fist, coating it in hardened hockey. He charged forward, swinging his fist at the oncoming Thunder Dragon. Boom. The destructive Thunder Dragon collided with the dark fist, unleashing devastating power. Aguila felt the force and almost lost his grip, but he had his pride as a Navy officer, and a duty to protect the naval base. He refused to give up so easily, but no matter how hard he tried, the power gap was too much. Guess this is the end of the line. Despair filled Aguila's eyes. Just as he was about to be overwhelmed by the Thunder Dragon. Go, Lieutenant General. We believe in you, Lieutenant General. We're counting on you, Lieutenant General. Hearing the cheers of his men, Aguila realized he couldn't give up. Suddenly, he drew on some hidden reserve of strength, pushing past his limit. Aarg! With a roar, Aguila's blood surged again, his power reaching its peak. His black fist seemed poised to shatter the Thunder Dragon. Friendship and duty, huh? How touching. Let's see if I can break that. Chen Fan sneered as he watched. The thunder of destruction in his body flared. The Thunder Dragon, which had begun to fade, flickered, and became even more terrifying. Under this absolute power, Aguila felt a profound despair. He couldn't hold on any longer. He'd reached his limit, and his body was about to crumble. In an instant, Aguila was completely engulfed by the Thunder Dragon, turning to ash and scattering to the winds. Boom. The Thunder Dragon slammed into the naval base, leaving a crater over 30 feet deep. Dust and debris flew everywhere. Chapter 34 Porusalino who didn't arrive. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Navy troops below watched in disbelief as Chen Fan turned their lieutenant general to ash, their faces twisted with rage, eyes bloodshot as they glared at Chen Fan. Kill him. Let's get him together to avenge the lieutenant general. Kill this pirate. Let's take him down together. Brothers, charge! A wave of intense morale surged through the Navy, and hundreds of soldiers charged at Chen Fan, driven by fearless determination. Chen Fan coldly observed their advance. If you're looking for death, I'm happy to oblige. Endless thunder punishment. Instantly, Chen Fan was enveloped in destructive lightning as he raised his hands. Dark clouds filled the sky, and bolts of lightning as thick as arms crashed down. The bolts struck directly into the charging ranks of Navy soldiers. Their expressions shifted to terror as the threat of death overwhelmed their battle lust. With each thunderous explosion, Aya! Screams echoed as the soldiers were vaporized. Against that devastating power, no one stood a chance, blood flowing freely. Even the soldiers hiding behind couldn't escape the deadly onslaught. The entire Navy base transformed into a living hell. Chen Fan, hovering in the air, surrounded by crackling energy, resembled a god of thunder, controlling life and death. He watched it all, showing no mercy to his enemies. The thunderous barrage lasted for a few minutes, until the entire Navy division was wiped out. Not a single soldier remained, not even those in the rear. Lafitte, already bordering on madness, looked up at the demonic figure of Chen Fan and felt a prickle of fear. "Let's go." Chen Fan had no desire to linger. He fixed his gaze on Lafitte, who was standing in mid-air, idly toying with a ball of lightning. His tone brooked no argument. Lafitte knew that refusal meant death, however, Lafitte wasn't inclined to refuse. A smile curved his lips. "As you command, Captain." Removing his hat with a flourish, Lafitte bowed with exaggerated politeness. Chen Fan descended from the sky, wisps of lightning striking the earth. In a moment, the lightning vanished, and he strolled toward the edge of the Navy base, Lafitte trailing close behind. Moving quickly, they reached the coast, where a pirate ship bobbed a few yards offshore. The vessel wasn't luxurious, nor particularly large. It was simply a ship Chen Fan had seized, the original flag torn down and replaced with a banner emblazoned with a thunderbolt. "Captain, how many people are in our crew now?" Lafitte was quick to embrace his new role. "2. Just you and me." Chen Fan replied casually. Lafitte was momentarily speechless. Had he really signed on to a pirate crew of 2? He seemed to have little choice. He boarded the ship, immediately taking on the role of helmsman. Fortunately, it wasn't a large vessel, or he wouldn't have been able to manage it alone. "Captain, where to first?" Lafitte turned to Chen Fan, who was already doing push-ups on deck. He wondered if his captain was some kind of workout freak. They had just finished a battle, and he was exercising instead of resting. Chen Fan stopped and stood up, contemplating whether to head straight to the New World. Now that he had a navigator, there was no need to waste time sailing around. Besides, the New World was full of powerful individuals, making it easier to recruit strong crewmates. Chen Fan envisioned his pirate crew as elite, filled only with those who were either exceptionally strong or possessed remarkable talent. Just as Chen Fan was deciding on their next destination, a newspaper bird fluttered overhead. In a flash of lightning, Chen Fan disappeared and reappeared, a newspaper in his hand. He had been hoping to see how high his bounty had been raised after his last exploit, but the headline immediately caught his eye. He scanned the main article. "Pirate King Roger captured by Navy. Execution scheduled in Roger Town, East Blue, 1 month from today." Chen Fan did the mental math. This was indeed the year that Pirate King Roger turned himself in. The decision was made. He couldn't miss the execution of Pirate King Roger. "First stop, East Blue," Chen Fan said, looking out to sea. "Aye, Captain." Lafitte had seen the news as well, and his expression was one of surprise. He didn't expect the Pirate King to be captured. Only a few people like Chen Fan knew Roger willingly turned himself in. As the sea breeze blew, the sun shone, and the waves rolled, the Thor sailed towards East Blue. Meanwhile, at the decimated Navy base, a few minutes after Chen Fan's departure, Porusalino finally arrived. Despite wielding the power of the glint fruit, the distance was too vast, and if Aguila and the others couldn't hold out for 15 minutes, there was no way Porusalino could have arrived any sooner. He took in the horrific scene, and Porusalino's ever-present lewd smirk vanished. His face hardened as he looked at the charred corpses and pools of blood. It was a mountain of bodies and a sea of blood. Porusalino realized Chen Fan had slaughtered everyone at the base. "That's terrible. This thunder god Chen Fan is too brutal." Porusalino clenched his fists in anger. He landed on the ground, noticing that some of the blood hadn't even dried. Chen Fan and his crew had only just left. Without hesitation, Porusalino's body flared with light, and he shot toward the shore, but when he arrived, there was no trace of Chen Fan's ship, only the endless ocean. Porusalino knew he was too late. Finding them in this vast expanse would be next to impossible. He pulled out a den mushy and dialed the number for headquarters, preparing to report the state of the base. At headquarters. Chapter 35 Xuexue Fruit Ability User. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cyborg Sora was getting antsy. He frowned, realizing no one was answering the phone at the branch. That was a bad sign. Golu, star. His phone rang, and he snatched it up. Reporting to Marshal Kong, the mission failed. Chen Fan and the others were already gone when we got there. Before Porusalino could finish, Cyborg Sora cut him off. What's the situation at the branch? The entire 36th Division was wiped out by Chen Fan. Every last naval soldier, including Lieutenant General Aguila, is dead. Porusalino sounded grim. Cyborg Kong's eyes went bloodshot with rage. Very few things could make him this mad. Damn Chen Fan! He roared. The entire naval headquarters heard it. Officers outside were wondering what had the marshal so worked up. After hanging up, Cyborg Kong barked into the intercom, increase Chen Fan's bounty to 1 billion. And get every available lieutenant general near the West Sea searching for Chen Fan. The moment you find him, call for backup. Actually, scratch that. If 2 or more generals are on the scene, then engage Chen Fan. Cyborg Sora was furious. The only thing keeping him from sending out more power was that most of his top brass was escorting Pirate King Roger to Rogue Town in the East Blue. He wanted to sick generals on Chen Fan himself. He knew that if Chen Fan was allowed to grow any stronger, the consequences would be catastrophic. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Morning arrived, and sunlight glinted off the ocean. Chen Fan and Lafitte were currently on a small island in the South Blue. After traveling so far, they needed to restock supplies. In those 10 days, Lafitte had figured out why Chen Fan, despite his youth, was so damn strong. He trained up to 14 hours a day. Most people simply couldn't handle that. Even if they could, their bodies would give out. Let's go, Chen Fan said to Lafitte. They walked into town, one behind the other. Lafitte pulled out some gold, bought a load of supplies, and they were about to head back to the ship. Chen Fan didn't see any point in wasting time on this island, but as they passed the tavern, he saw a familiar young figure go inside, though he couldn't quite place it. Hold up, Chen Fan said to Lafitte, his tone casual. Sure, Lafitte replied, knowing better than to question his captain. Chen Fan walked into the tavern, Lafitte right behind him. The place was packed, mostly with rough-looking characters sporting tattoos. Definitely not your average bar. Chen Fan didn't care. He took a seat at a table and said, 2 rums. No one paid him any attention. Chen Fan focused on the green-haired girl in the corner, sitting alone. Captain, did we come in here just for that kid? Lafitte asked. Yep, Chen Fan replied. He was sure he'd recognized the right person. It was Monet, the future snow fruit user. She looked about 12 years old. Now, he wanted to see if she had already eaten the fruit. If she had, he might be interested in recruiting her. It was a Logia-type devil fruit, after all. It was a shame Monet hadn't reached her full potential due to her poor combat skills. Otherwise, she could have been as strong as a lieutenant general. Lafitte had no idea what Chen Fan was thinking. He was taken aback by the confirmation. He hadn't expected his captain to be interested in a little girl. Was he a Lulacan? They'd only known each other for a little over a week, but Lafitte had formed a strong impression of Chen Fan from day one. He seemed indifferent, dedicated to improving his strength, and ice-cold when dealing with enemies. He couldn't understand why such a guy would be into little girls. Chen Fan, oblivious to Lafitte's misinterpretation, headed straight for Monet's table. Lafitte saw him coming and figured his suspicions were right. But he wouldn't interfere with Chen Fan's decisions. Chen Fan pulled up a chair at Monet's table. Hey, who are you? Do I know you? Monet asked, her cheeks flushed from the booze. Nope. Chen Fan's reply was curt. Then beat it. I'm not in the mood. Monet sounded annoyed. Can't. I need to check something. Chen Fan didn't budge. Monet, already in a foul mood, lost it. If you don't leave, I'm gonna kick you out myself. The commotion had drawn the attention of the other patrons, who eyed Chen Fan with amusement. See that? Looks like that guy's new. He's gonna be in trouble. Yeah, who picks a fight with the little witch? He's asking for it. Right? Last guy who bothered her ended up frozen solid. The thugs shook their heads, pitying Chen Fan. They figured he'd be thrown out any second now. Lafitte just looked curious. He was dying to know what his captain was up to. Chen Fan just smiled. Try it. That was the last straw. Monet attacked, ice crystals forming around her fist. Chapter 36 East China Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Facing the attack, Chen Fan didn't even flinch. A dark energy enveloped his right hand as he reached out. Everyone in the tavern except Lafitte wore a smug grin, anticipating Chen Fan's humiliation. They'd all witnessed Monet's invulnerability firsthand. Bullets and fists couldn't even touch her, but the instant Monet's icy fist made contact with Chen Fan's hand, he grabbed it. Monet was stunned. How could a kid like him know about armament hockey? The others were equally shocked. It was the first time they'd seen anyone catch Monet's fist. Only Lafitte remained calm. Seeing the ice forming on Monet's body, he already suspected what Chen Fan was up to. Join my crew, Chen Fan stated, sure that Monet had eaten the snow fruit. Why would I? Monet was surprised he'd caught her, but she wasn't about to give in easily. She coated her left fist in ice and swung again. A smirk touched Chen Fan's lips. He extended his left hand, equally dark, and effortlessly caught her other fist. Death or follow me? Chen Fan's expression hardened, his eyes turning as cold as ice. His grip on Monet's fists tightened. Ack! Monet cried out in pain, realizing she was outmatched. The killer intent in Chen Fan's eyes was real. Terrified of death, Monet begged, let go. I promise. Good, Chen Fan said, smiling as he released her hands. Follow me. Chen Fan stood and gestured for Monet to follow, his eyes a clear warning against escape. Resigned, Monet trailed Chen Fan and Lafitte out of the tavern. The bandits stared in disbelief, paralyzed by a crushing pressure, barely daring to breathe. They didn't relax until Chen Fan and the others were gone. Phew! The tavern filled with relieved breaths. That was terrifying. His eyes were so cold. My legs felt like jelly, someone said. Yeah, the pressure was intense. Felt like death was breathing down my neck. The bandits felt like they'd survived a disaster. Meanwhile, the three walked to the coast. Where are we going? Monet asked Chen Fan. And what do you do? Pirates. With that, Chen Fan led Monet onto the ship. Monet understood that boarding the ship meant becoming a pirate and leaving the island. She wasn't particularly attached to the island anyway. Her family was gone, and only the thought of her missing sister tugged at her heart. If I hadn't eaten a devil fruit, would I even be alive right now? She wondered. Starting today, you'll do basic physical training in the mornings and devil fruit training in the afternoons, Chen Fan said sternly. I don't tolerate dead weight on my ship. Understood, Monet replied, not daring to argue. The sea breeze blew, seagulls soared overhead, and the Thor continued its journey toward the east blue. 10 days later, the sun beat down on the sea. Chen Fan finished his physical training and ate to replenish his energy. The heat flowed through his body, repairing the strain and slowly improving his strength. Without his special abilities, even the toughest person would collapse under such intense training. Over the past 10 days, Monet had come to share Lafitte's thoughts about Chen Fan. He was a training maniac, working out over 14 hours a day, while forcing her to train for 8. She was exhausted. How does he do it? She wondered. Besides admiring Chen Fan's dedication, Monet no longer considered escaping. She was getting stronger under his devilish training, and she was learning a lot. She now knew her devil fruit was a Logia type, meaning she could turn into snow, which was why attacks phased through her. And Chen Fan had found a way around that. Armament hockey. At that moment, miles away from the Thor, a massive Navy warship was headed their way. Chen Fan had become a high-priority target after wiping out the Navy base, attracting the attention of many vice admirals and commodores who wanted to capture him. Commodore, look! That pirate ship, isn't that Thunder God Chen Fan? A lieutenant pointed out, using a telescope. Hearing the name, Ghost Spider quickly grabbed a telescope. It was Chen Fan. Looks like we're in luck, said Xuexue, clearly excited. We actually ran into Thunder God Chen Fan. Xuexue, a tall, bearded man, quickly obtained a telescope as well. Doberman, with a curly beard and flowing brown hair, did the same. Let's go get him, Ghost Spider said to the others. This will be a huge victory. Chapter 37 Fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xuexue was practically vibrating with eagerness, itching to get his hands on Chen Fan. Doberman, though, remained composed. Shouldn't we call for backup? He suggested. Get some of the other major generals or higher involved. It'd give us a much better chance. What are you talking about, Doberman? Xuexue scoffed, turning to Doberman. Chen Fan is just a lieutenant commander at headquarters. We're all major generals, sure, but we're strong enough to be lieutenant commanders. 3 against 1. What's there to be afraid of? Exactly, Ghost Spider chimed in, also standing up. And if others show up, that's just one more person to split the credit with. Hearing this, Doberman didn't push the issue. Full speed ahead towards the pirate ship, Ghost Spider ordered. The Navy soldiers under their command immediately steered the warship towards the pirate vessel. Meanwhile, Lafitte, at the helm of their ship, noticed the warship rapidly approaching. Captain, we've got a Navy warship coming right at us, Lafitte reported to Chen Fan. Chen Fan set down his food, looked up, and saw 3 generals standing on the deck. They looked a little different from how they would later, but not so much that Chen Fan didn't recognize them instantly. Interesting. Ghost Spider, Doberman, and Xuexue. They seem awfully eager. Looks like they're here to collect me. Chen Fan's expression remained calm. Do we make a run for it? Lafitte asked. Nah. Just gonna stretch my legs a bit. A glint of battle lust flashed in Chen Fan's eyes. His strength had been teetering between elite lieutenant commander and lieutenant commander for a while now. He knew he needed to push either his two-color hockey to the 3rd level, or further develop his thunder fruit powers, to reach the next level. Relying on his own training was just too slow. He needed external pressure to really make progress. Doberman and the others, at their peak, probably had the strength of elite lieutenant commanders, but even the current Porusalinos only possessed that strength. Right now, these 3 were merely lieutenant commanders at headquarters. 1 against 3. That should give him the push he needed. Monet, on the other hand, had never seen a warship this big before. She knew it was the Navy, hunting pirates, and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. But seeing Chen Fan's calm demeanor put her at ease. On the naval warship, now only a few hundred yards away, Doberman and the others realized Chen Fan and his crew had definitely spotted them, but instead of running, they were just sitting there, waiting. Careful, Doberman warned. I don't recognize the other 2. He'd never seen Lafitte in the Navy branch, and had no idea he'd defected to Chen Fan's side. After all, everyone in the branch except Lafitte had died. Relax, Xuexue said. It's just 2 extra people, one looks like a stiff and the other is just a little girl. What danger can they pose? Don't sweat it. The 3 of us go all out. Chen Fan would need to be an elite lieutenant commander to take us. We got this. A minute passed, the sea breeze blowing, the massive warship closed to within 100 yards of Chen Fan's vessel. Thunder God, Chen Fan. I heard you were supposed to be ruthless and collected, but you just standing there when you see us coming. You're more confident than you should be. Xuexue called out mockingly. He figured Sikorsky and Brown Dolphin must have wanted him to fail, deliberately hyping up Chen Fan's abilities. 3 of you, huh? Not bad. Just enough to be my stepping stones. Chen Fan didn't bother responding to Xuexue's taunts, just stared ahead with arrogant eyes. Real arrogant, Xuexue bristled, a flicker of anger crossing his face. Saying you're going to use us as stepping stones? You should be figuring out how to survive first. You'll find out, Chen Fan said. Just stand back you 2 and watch, I'll handle these guys alone. Thunder crackled around Chen Fan, and he vanished in a burst of speed. Now standing proudly in mid-air. Hearing that Chen Fan didn't want their help, even the usually calm Doberman felt a surge of irritation. Nobody liked being looked down on. They weren't stupid, though. They knew none of them stood a chance against Chen Fan alone. It would take all 3 of them, working together, to bring him down. Let's go, no holding back. We take him down as quick as we can, Doberman ordered, drawing his katana with his left hand and using Moon Step to propel himself into the air. Ghost Spider wasted no time either. He activated Life Return, sprouting 6 black arms, each wielding a samurai sword, and used Moon Step to position himself to Doberman's left. Xuexue followed suit, drawing his katana with his right hand and using Moon Step to take up position on Doberman's right. Seeing them moving with such coordinated force, Ghost Spider even using Life Return right off the bat, it was clear they were going all in. Chen Fan wasn't intimidated in the slightest. His face lit up with excitement and a burning desire to fight. Only a battle like this could push him to break his limits. Armed. Thunder Fist. With another flash of lightning, Chen Fan blurred into motion, charging straight for Doberman in the center, his thunderous fist promising destruction. Doberman, remaining calm, coated his katana with the second stage of armed haki and slashed at Chen Fan with blinding speed. Boom! The thunderous fist collided with the haki-infused blade. The impact sent a jolt through Doberman, the force of the blow driving him backward. At the same time, Ghost Spider and Xuexue, their own blades crackling with armed haki, lunged at Chen Fan from either side. Chapter 38 The Third Stage of Armed Domineering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Fan didn't flinch against the two men's rapid-fire attacks. A surge of destructive thunder erupted, instantly blasting Doberman back. He then channeled that power into his hands, forming 2 electric blue thunder spears. The thunderous spears deflected their weapons. In a flash of lightning, Chen Fan vanished, reappearing behind the 2 Xuexue fighters. He aimed the spears at their backs, ready to strike. Using their observation haki, the 2 reacted instantly, their swords coated in armament haki deflecting the attack. Simultaneously, Doberman came crashing in from behind. Shave! Chen Fan, using his elemental form to execute the Navy's 6th form, vanished again, causing Doberman's attack to miss completely. The battle became a tense stalemate. Chen Fan, 1 against 3, couldn't afford to let up, but this high-intensity brawl, constantly pushing his haki to its limit, was taking a serious toll on his stamina. The 3 admirals noticed this and pressed their attack, giving Chen Fan no room to breathe. A sky-blue blur clashed with 3 figures in the air, a brutal exchange of blows, blood splattering on the deck, and destructive thunder echoing above, below on the Thor. Monet watched anxiously, asking Lafitte, "Do you think Big Brother can win?" "It's hard to say. It looks even, but the captain's at a disadvantage. He can't keep up this pace for long." Lafitte's expression was unusually serious. Most of the Navy soldiers on the warship couldn't tell who had the advantage. Only some of the higher-ranking officers saw it, already anticipating Doberman and the other 2 admirals defeating Chen Fan, securing them promotions. In the air, Ghost Spider, swinging his sword, sneered at Chen Fan, "I'll admit, you're strong. None of us can take you 1-on-1, maybe not even 2-on-1, but 1 against 3? You're overconfident. How long can you keep this up? We're just here to take you back." Ghost Spider mocked from the right. "Save the chatter," Chen Fan said, unfazed, continuing to unleash his thunderous fists. He met the 3 men's relentless attacks head-on, blood flying as he landed blows of his own. It was a test of endurance. It seemed like Chen Fan was destined to lose unless something drastic happened. Even so, Chen Fan remained confident, pushing his destructive thunder beyond its limits again and again. As time dragged on, the injuries piled up on all 4 fighters, their blood staining the sea. Ha, ha. Chen Fan breathed heavily, sweat pouring down his face. The strain was obvious. Doberman offered no respite. He and the other 2 men renewed their assault, a relentless storm of attacks. "You're asking for it." Chen Fan's eyes narrowed, and he unleashed more thunder, his fists colliding with their swords. Clang! The sounds of clashing metal echoed as the 4 became locked in a desperate struggle. Chen Fan, who had been exchanging blows, was now pushed back, forced to defend. He no longer had the strength to counterattack. Don't underestimate Chen Fan when he's giving it his all. Doberman shouted to the others, and the 3 seemed to find another gear. Though they were tiring, they were in better shape than Chen Fan. Outnumbered and exhausted, Chen Fan was clearly losing ground. Small cuts and bruises began to appear on his body. Monet, watching from below, was deeply worried. "What do we do, Lafitte? The captain's losing." "Nothing we can do. We have to trust him." Lafitte knew that if they intervened, the navy would swarm them. They'd still be at a disadvantage. The battle raged on, sweat flying. Chen Fan continued to parry attacks, the thunder crackling around him growing weaker, despite being outnumbered. His eyes burned with determination, the black substance on his fist solidifying. He fought like a cornered animal, using any part of his body as a weapon. Doberman and the others, blinded by their apparent advantage, pressed their attack, intent on capturing Chen Fan as quickly as possible. This relentless assault was draining their own stamina. They also noticed a troubling detail: whenever Chen Fan's thunder connected, a lingering electrical charge remained in their bodies, gradually causing numbness. They dismissed it, confident in their superior position. The sharp swords continued to strike. Just then, the black substance on Chen Fan's fist seemed to become completely solid. Xuexue, wielding his sword in his left hand, coated it with advanced armament hockey, and lunged at Chen Fan was forced to retreat. Doberman and the others attacked from either side. But with a roar, Chen Fan's armament hockey fully materialized, breaking through to the next level, his power surging, infused with destructive thunder. Chen Fan blasted Xuexue back, then, drawing back both hands, he unleashed thunderous fists like cannonballs at Doberman and the other admiral. Clang! The fists slammed into the black swords, and a shockwave ripped through the water. The force sent Doberman and the other admiral flying backward. Seeing the fully solidified armament hockey, Doberman and the others understood. Chen Fan's hockey had evolved, making him even more dangerous. They knew what this meant. The outcome of the fight was no longer a certainty. Chapter 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After breaking through, Chen Fan grinned, his fighting spirit blazing as he went on the offensive against the three vice-admirals. Seeing his fist glowing with dark, thunderous energy, Doberman and the others charged in. The clash was immediate, but this time, they were evenly matched. Chen Fan, though outnumbered, wasn't just defending. His increased power let him parry attacks faster, giving him enough openings to occasionally counter. Doberman, Xuexue, and Ghost Spider were shocked by Chen Fan's sudden surge in strength. They hadn't expected him to level up mid-battle. Down on the pirate ship, Monet nervously watched the fight. Seeing Chen Fan holding his own against the three vice-admirals, she turned to Lafitte. Lafitte, how did he suddenly get so strong? He's actually fighting them equally now. Lafitte, eyes fixed on the battle, replied, the captain's armament hockey has reached the third level. This next stage will decide the outcome. He had known from the start that Chen Fan's decision to stand and fight wasn't reckless. He had a plan. While Monet and Lafitte were excited, the Navy soldiers on the warship looked like they'd swallowed something awful. They couldn't believe the sudden turn of events. Up in the air, the battle raged. Explosions echoed, and lightning flashed. Doberman and the others realized that they couldn't win against Chen Fan's third-level armament hockey in a straight-up brawl. No more games, Doberman barked. Xuexue and Ghost Spider understood instantly. Doberman roared forward, his long sword crackling with power. Chen Fan met the attack head-on, his fist shimmering with thunder. Clang! Doberman was sent flying backward. Simultaneously, Ghost Spider and Xuexue flanked Chen Fan, blades flashing. Unfazed, Chen Fan unleashed a series of powerful punches. The force of the blows sent all three of them staggering back. Chen Fan, let's end this. All together now. Armament, golden slash. Doberman roared, his sword enveloped in darkness. With a furious swing, a blade of golden energy shot towards Chen Fan. Armament, spider silk slash. Armament, fiery slash. Ghost Spider and Xuexue channeled their life force, their swords turning inky black as they unleashed a torrent of slashes. A series of energy blades, one black, one red, and one gold, hurtled toward Chen Fan. You think that's enough to beat me? Chen Fan scoffed. Armament, million-volt thunder dragon. He raised his hands, and dark clouds gathered overhead. Terrifying thunder rumbled, and a massive blue dragon made of pure lightning erupted from the sky. Boom! The thunder dragon slammed into the energy blades, the force of the collision obliterating everything around them. The shockwave tossed Chen Fan and Doberman back hundreds of feet. The sea churned, and the Navy warship below rocked violently. The Thor nearly capsized. Finally, the four combatants regained their balance, suspended in the air, eyeing each other. After a moment's pause, Chen Fan vanished in a flash of lightning, landing back on the Thor. Doberman, Xuexue, and Ghost Spider exchanged glances and returned to their ship. "Go! Get us out of here!" Chen Fan ordered as soon as he landed. Lafitte didn't hesitate, immediately setting sail. The Navy soldiers watched as the Thor sped away. "Major General, should we pursue them?" an officer asked. "They're escaping." Doberman remained silent, motionless. The other two admirals said nothing. 2 minutes later, the Thor was thousands of meters away. Chen Fan finally coughed. A mouthful of blood splattered on the deck. He had been fighting at his absolute limit, and the shockwave from the final collision had taken its toll. He had hidden his pain from Doberman and the others, but he knew their injuries couldn't be any less severe. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let him escape. Even if he knew they were wounded, Chen Fan wouldn't have risked a desperate fight. His objective had been achieved. Armament hockey had successfully reached the 3rd level. Continuing the battle would only lead to more casualties among his crew, and even if he managed to kill the 3 admirals, the remaining Navy soldiers would likely overwhelm him. "Brother, are you all right?" Monet asked, worried by Chen Fan's pallor and the blood. "Captain, are you okay? Should we increase our speed?" Lafitte added. "We need to avoid being caught by the Navy." "I'm fine," Chen Fan assured them. "Those 3 are in worse shape than I am." He then grabbed a stockpile of food from the cabin and began to devour it. Waves of heat washed over Chen Fan, pouring into his body, repairing his injuries like rain after a drought. Feeling more stable, Chen Fan bandaged his wounds and closed his eyes to rest. Meanwhile, on the Navy warship, after watching Chen Fan and his ship disappear over the horizon, Doberman collapsed, spitting out blood as he knelt on the deck. Xuexue and Ghost Spider were in even worse condition, their bodies on the verge of collapse, bleeding from multiple wounds. Chapter 40 The Navy's high-end combat capabilities gather together. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing what happened, the Navy doctors jumped into action and rushed the 3 injured guys to the infirmary. Doberman was kicking himself, wishing he'd waited for backup. He knew Chen Fan was badly hurt, otherwise, he wouldn't have bailed so fast. One more vice admiral, and they could have bagged him for sure. Too bad there's no do-overs in life. 2 hours later, Doberman, barely able to sit up through the pain, used a den mushy to report their failed mission to HQ. At Marine HQ, when Fleet Admiral Kong heard how fast Chen Fan was improving, that he could go toe-to-toe with 3 vice admirals, he was floored. That put Chen Fan at elite vice admiral level, no question. Damn kid, getting stronger by the day. After Roger's execution, I'm upping his priority, Kong thought. Chen Fan couldn't be allowed to run wild. The seas were already a mess, but for now, Chen Fan would have to wait. The Navy's big show was Roger's public execution in 10 days. Kong ordered another million added to Chen Fan's bounty, 11 billion berries for a kid who wasn't even 20. That was insane. Night fell, and the sea breeze picked up. Chen Fan was awake. A couple of hot baths had done the trick. He was almost back to normal, staring at his fists, now fully coated in armament hockey. Chen Fan figured he was just about on par with an elite vice admiral. He then measured himself against a Kainu, shaking his head. He knew he still had ground to cover. To catch a Kainu, he needed to unlock the 3rd stage of his hockey, and he needed to level up his rumble fruit powers. Chen Fan was putting in over 4 hours a day honing his fruit abilities, and his physique helped him progress fast, but he'd only had the fruit a few months. To get this far in such a short time was pushing it. Luckily, he felt like he was on the verge of breaking through to the 3rd level of hockey. But evolving his rumble fruit powers? That wasn't happening in a month or 2, putting a Kainu on the back burner for now. Chen Fan thought about another name, Vice Admiral Henry David, the guy Bud Ek wanted him to take out. The reason Chen Fan hadn't gone after David yet was because most vice admirals at HQ were elite-level fighters. Going after one right off the bat would have been suicide. Now, Chen Fan was planning to ice Henry David after Roger's execution. Until then, he'd focus on unlocking 3rd-level observation hockey. That settled, and with his cuts already scabbed over, Chen Fan didn't overthink it. He hit the deck and started some light training. Lafitte and Monet, watching from a distance, were blown away. Dude, is he a freak or what? He was half dead at noon, and 8 hours later, he's practically good as new and back to training. Monet's jaw dropped. Interesting. A captain like this is worth following, Lafitte said, a rare smile on his face. Days turned into weeks. 18 days later, in Logue Town, East Blue, Roger's execution was a day away. Chen Fan, Lafitte, and Monet were strolling down the streets, big hats pulled low over their faces. Logue Town was packed. Pirates were shoulder to shoulder with Marines trying to keep the peace. Everyone wanted to see the Pirate King's end, but these pirates, usually cocky and wild, were keeping a low profile. The Navy had flexed its muscle in the days leading up to the execution. Garp, Sengoku, Tsuru, and the 3 monster admirals had all rolled into town, along with a ton of vice admirals and rear admirals. It was like half the Navy was there. With that kind of firepower, who'd dare start trouble? The big-name pirates like Shiki, Whitebeard, and Red Count were no-shows. Most of the people around were crew members and small-time pirates. They couldn't stand a chance against guys like Garp. And the Navy wasn't looking to round up every pirate in town. Their priority was Roger's public execution. They couldn't afford to let Roger's crew try a rescue. Where would they find the time to arrest every Tom, Dick, and Harry? That's why Chen Fan felt safe enough to show his face. As long as you didn't stir the pot, the Navy wasn't going to bother you. Hey, so how did the Navy catch Roger anyway? He's supposed to be unbeatable, Monet said, having heard all the legends. Who knows? Maybe he turned himself in, Chen Fan joked. Monet and Lafitte didn't buy it for a second. No way the Pirate King would surrender. Seeing their looks, Chen Fan let it drop. He knew Roger was dying from a terminal illness and was going to go out in a blaze of glory to kick off the great pirate era. Walking down the street, Chen Fan spotted future big shots like Marco from the Whitebeard Pirates, Doflamingo, and even Hawkeye Mihawk, but Chen Fan didn't make a move. He didn't want to risk anything before the execution. He wasn't trying to save Roger. He wasn't strong enough. Garp and Sengoku were at their peak. Messing with those guys, even with his elite vice admiral strength, would be a death wish.